Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boy Jack here at the Irish Hotspur, and I'm going to be taking a deep dive into the stats and see how our best players in and around our squad compare to some of the stars around the Premier League. We have plenty of players who are having terrific seasons so far, but let's see how they really truly compare to some of the other better players around the Premier League who are also having great seasons. If that sounds of interest to you, smash that like button for me, please. Get those comments in down below, and let me know who your Player of the Month candidate is going to be, because that's something we have to put forward pretty soon if we're going to have any sort of chance of winning it again. Maddison, of course, won it last season, so let me know your Player of the Month candidate in those comments down below. Let's take a deep dive into some of our best performers so far this season. Let's take a look at one of our best performers so far this season, James Maddison. He's been having a terrific season, and one of the stats I was surprised by is actually him leading in so many shots on target, or actually not leading, but I guess in second, and he's actually surrounded by really good strikers, not many midfielders. He's surrounded by Holland, Ferguson from Brighton, Alvarez from Man City as well, Jared Bowen from West Ham, Sonny in our own side, and he is really, I think, one of the better midfielders, it looks like, at being able to register shots around the Premier League, because the next sort of maybe creative midfielder, sort of true midfielder, is in and around the 12th position. It's actually Bruno Fernandes and Eze. Also, when you look at his fouls drawn, that really shows, I think, his ability to get moves going and how dangerous he is actually when he does try to turn his man, or when he does try to make something happen just with the ball at his feet. He's just so clever, I think, at trying to spin past his man, try to take them on, and he forces players, I think, to foul him, because he really takes it, kind of directly past them, and not really a way that sort of tries to avoid them. He really just tries to take them on head on, which sort of forces players, I think, to make a decision about whether to try to really win the challenge or just sort of trying to drag him down and bring him down. And I feel like that's really been working out for him this season, and it's been working out for him last season. When you look at some of his stats from last year with Leicester City, that was actually something that he really did truly excel in, actually, was some of the fouls drawn. Shot creating actions, I mean, he's just been about the best creative midfielder, I think, in the Premier League this season. Maddison has 58 shot creating actions. The next highest player is Bukayo Saka over at Arsenal with 36. He's averaging 8.8 a game. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous compared to anybody else in the Premier League, and that's just ridiculous in general. I'd be surprised if he'd be able to keep up that sort of ratio and that sort of feat with that per 90 sort of ratio, but still, I mean, he's absolutely bossing it right now in the creativity department, and you can even see that it's turning into goals. He's tied with Ollie Watkins for some of the most goal-creating actions this season as well. He's also been such a danger in and around the penalty area. He's registering some of the most passes into the penalty area. The next one is Bruno with 22. I feel like a lot of these stats are just sort of real good indications of what a real creative midfielder does. He's able to get shots on goal, create things for himself, but he also, of course, has to be able to create chances for others. And Maddison has absolutely been doing that this season. He's been a true boss for us and has basically been, I think, probably one of the better midfielders on form this season in the Premier League. Now, I do think that's a realistic question to ask. Is Maddison maybe one of the better creative midfielders in the Premier League right now, just on form alone? Because you look at some of the stats that he is leading in. You look at, shots total. You're looking at the goal creating action, shot creating actions. He's doing both things at once. He's creating goals for himself, and he's creating goals for others. And he's creating goals for others better than pretty much any other creative midfielder right now in the Premier League. And so when you look at just players like Phil Foden, maybe guys like Martin Odegaard, Bruno Fernandes, you do kind of have to throw him in that conversation as one of the better midfielders, one of the better creative midfielders, really, in the Premier League right now, and let me know how you think he stacks up. Let's take a look at one of my favorite signings from this season, Guglielmo Vicario, and see how he's stacking up compared to other great keepers around the Premier League. You look at post-shot expected goals minus goals allowed, which is sort of a good way to indicate if a goalkeeper is keeping goals out of the net that the XG algorithm would have thought would have already gone in, or would have thought would go in. And he's surrounded by Bernd Leno, Jose Sa, Areola, Neto, all good keepers at making great saves to keep their teams in it. But you look at those teams and that they play for, and they're more kind of defensive teams that do invite a lot of pressure onto them, and yet that would mean that they would probably pull off a lot of big saves. That right keeps them in the game because they invite so much pressure and so many shots onto them. But we play in a more progressive side, more on the front foot side, very high possession side, and he's still making big saves for us, and he's still being asked to make big saves for us, Guglielmo Vicario. So it's nice to see that he's kept around, I think, 2.5 sort of goals out, I think, according to that sort of statistic there, which is just really good, really good stat to show that he's been good in possession, but he's also been very good at keeping goals out. out and passes attempted. He's surrounded by keepers like Onana, Ederson, Trafford, Leno, Flecken, and Allison, all keepers that are known for being pretty comfortable with the ball at their feet, which is good to see. He's been able to do both once again, right? He's keeping goals out, but he's also being asked to play out from the back, and I can't really recall too many sketchy moments from him this season. Crosses stopped, he's actually doing pretty well there, and you look at saves made, again, he's surrounded by goalkeepers that are pretty much more on the defensive, kind of teams that are going to be inviting a lot of pressure onto them. Wes Fotheringham is, leading that staff for saves made. Jose Sa is high up there. Areola is high up there, as well as Leno and Allison. Allison, I would say, is probably the only other keeper that I would say maybe is more similar to kind of Vicario in the fact that he's playing, again, in a more kind of progressive team on the front foot, high possession, high intensity sort of thing. And you still are asked, though, when a team hits you on the counterattack to make big saves to keep your team in it. And Allison has been doing it for years, and Vicario is starting to show that he can do it at least to a similar level, at least so far this season. And I do look at Big Vic, and also as well, you look at some of the actions outside of his penalty area. Really good to see that as well, because when you kind of, another thing just quickly is that he's been a decent sweeper keeper for us this season. He's second in the league in terms of defensive actions outside of his penalty area so far this season. So whenever there's been a counterattack or any sort of ball in behind, Big Vic has done a good job at sort of closing down those margins, closing down that green grass that looks like a striker could take advantage of trying to run in behind a Mickey Van de Ven and a Romero. Van de Ven for sure has that recovery pace, but we do need Big Vic as well to also be switched on and being able to be that defensive presence for us, that sweeper keeper, and he's done a decent job so far this season, second in the league. Big Vic so far this season has been very tidy in possession for us. Again, I can't recall too many sketchy moments from him, and he's been able to be a very good sweeper keeper when needed. But also what he's done that I feel like very few keepers have actually done, that have done those previous two things that I mentioned, is that he's actually kept us in some games with some big saves, some crack saves, if you will. Very few keepers, I think, are doing all of the above right now. You look at Onana, who's just brought into Man United. He's so good at the ball with his feet, but he's not exactly making the most convincing of saves, or when they do expect him to save it, he's not always doing it, to the same efficiency or to the same level or to the same rate that a guy like Vicario has. And you look at a guy maybe like a Sanchez at Chelsea, he seems like he's making all right saves, but he doesn't seem as comfortable with his feet. A lot of big keepers around the Premier League that are, regarded pretty highly or maybe seen in that sort of modern mold, I feel like aren't doing all three in the way that Vicario is. Maybe Allison is probably up there, you would say, but I don't say that they're really doing it in sort of maybe apart from Allison and sort of the same sort of kind of a degree that Vicario is, right? And I feel like that's a real sign that he's probably been one of the best value for money signings this season. He's been brought in for under 20 million euros. I think Onana, right, was a huge fee, probably was close to, I think, around the record goalkeeper fee. You look at as well, I think Sanchez was brought in for some pretty decent money too, I think, over at Chelsea, and Vicario was brought in for half, a third, a quarter. It's just been, a ridiculous, sort of, a value for money signing in comparison to some of the other big modern goalkeepers that are going around for some pretty ridiculous fees. So he's doing all three at once now, at least in my opinion. And I think he's probably up there, at least further down the season, in terms of one of those conversations for a steal of the summer type of signing. Now let's take a look at one of our better performers from this season, Yves Bissouma. And he's been getting a lot of love and a lot of praise, as he should be. And at one stage, he was leading the league, I believe, in successful take-ons. He's in the top 5 now, but he is still leading the league in tackles and interceptions. And if I'm still right, I think that's, a stat or a sort of combination of the two kind of categories, both off the ball and on the ball, that no other midfielder is really doing right now in the way that he is. He's showing that he is that press-breaking machine. I think he also has some of the most combined carrying distance of any player in the Premier League right now, and he also has some of the most touches of any player in the Premier League right now. And most of those guys who are leading in the carrying distance and leading in the touches are actually center backs, I think, like apart from Rodri. But Rodri's not leading in the successful take-ons like Bissouma is, and I'm not sure if he's getting nearly as stuck in as Bissouma is right now. He's just been doing everything right now, and he's so appreciated usually for how fun and easy on the eye he is in possession. But what he is really doing is, getting stuck in for us, being that cleanup person, being that tempo setter. He's just doing everything at once. And I just would say, he's just not really shown enough appreciation, though, maybe for what he's doing off the ball, because he is actually kind of alone and is kind of asked to do a lot of things that maybe most midfielders can't. Even that Liverpool game, the way he tracked back to win it off of Salah, some of the times that he's tracked back to win it off of other real speedy sort of players. He's just been an absolute boss for us. One of the tackles he had against Saliba in North London Derby was insane. He's just been getting stuck in for us, and as well has been a real diamond in possession. It's just such a beautiful player to watch. Yves Bissouma was a very well regarded and thought of player, I remember, at Brighton, and I feel like his last season with Graham Potter maybe wasn't his best or something, if I recall, and he was obviously not really well appreciated by Antonio Conte, but I feel like this season he's reminding us, as well as everybody else in the Premier League, that he deserves to be mentioned in some of the sort of kind of names and sort of the conversations of sort of the better midfielders around the Premier League, some of the better number sixes in the Premier League, some of the better defensive midfielders in the Premier League. To even label him as just a number six or a defensive midfielder feels disingenuous, or feels like you're not appreciating enough of what he's doing, because he does so many things at once. He's just such a complete midfielder, really, in that sort of deep lying area. He's just doing so many things that others just can't. I feel like Yves Bissouma is once again reminding us of a top quality that he has, and why he should be mentioned and why he should be included in some of those conversations I hear about who are some of the better midfielders around the Premier League. He was really top at Brighton, and I feel like maybe fell off at maybe towards the end, or just wasn't really, I think, in the same sort of breath, maybe because Caicedo was coming into things and they were sort of shipping him out, and then Antonio Conte didn't appreciate him, but now he really is showing that appreciation once again that he deserves. Now let's take a look at a man that deserves a lot more appreciation, that deserves a lot more respect, probably from myself, maybe considering last time I did one of these stats sort of deep dives, as well as probably plenty of others around the Premier League. He's been such a symbol of creativity for us. Dejan Kulusevski, absolutely love what he's been doing. I think his best game of the season was in that North London derby. I think he's been slowly warming up to really getting back to his sort of top form. He's fourth in the league in key passes. He's actually third in the league in passes into the penalty area. That is a typo there, by the way, but he is really showing that he's around, the better creators in the Premier League when it comes to key passes. He's only one behind Maddison. He's behind Bruno Fernandes. He's behind Trippier in terms of that category. When you look at shot creating actions, he's just behind Bruno Fernandes, Odegaard over at Arsenal, as well as Saka. He's definitely showing that he can be producing some of the similar numbers that some of the better creative midfielders, creative wingers around the Premier League can do. And when you look at what he does in possession in terms of ball carrying, he's been absolutely terrific. He has some of the most touches in the opposition box. He has some of the most carries into the penalty area. He's the most progressive carries in the Premier League right now. And the fact that he has 61 touches in the box has shown that he's really been able to sort of break the lines and be able to make that defense really start to panic, really start to cause some chaos. He's been able to carry it into there. He's been able to hold it up in there. He's been able to, pass it into there, be able to create for others. He's just been a menace in the final third this season in terms of that creativity department. And I think Kulusevski, when you look at a lot of these numbers together, and also considering what he's been doing off the ball, out of possession, right? He's been working so hard for us off the ball compared to maybe how others wingers do. He's really deserves a lot more respect with some of these sort of categories that he's either leading in or is actually around some of the better players, or around some of the better creators in the Premier. Now, Kulusevski just deserves more respect. In terms of ball carrying and possession play, he's been one of the best in the league this season at taking us up the pitch, at being able to be that guy that we can rely on to not lose it, and also be able to create and break the lines of the opposition, and also getting us higher up the pitch, progressing us up the pitch, getting us into the penalty area, either just through his own dribbling, through his own kind of magic, or also just creating something by giving it to somebody else into the penalty area, and sort of making that defense start to break down, start to question, start to make mistakes. It's just been terrific for us at creating chances. I think we've relied a lot on Maddison for that creativity, but it's also coming a lot through Kulusevski, and it feels like that hasn't been mentioned enough. He's worked relentlessly hard off the ball as well, maybe compared to other wingers around the Premier League. I don't like to always just throw them under the bus, but maybe guys like a Marcus Rashford in comparison, who doesn't seem to work nearly as hard off the ball as a guy like Kulusevski does. And so that's what we're really getting from Kulu, is the creativity again, but also combined with that work rate. I think he always had that work rate, but the creativity was, at least last season, not at its best. And it's probably because of the system, maybe because of the manager. And also, I think Kulu just wasn't really at his most confident, probably because of injury and just falling out of form. But now he's reminding us what he can do and what he can bring. He's showing us what he's capable of, and why we shouldn't write off players too soon. Or also, especially after what he was doing, in the first 6 months of what he got here, he's at some of the best levels of any winger, of any creator in the Premier League. And then he sort of fell off off for a bit, but now he's starting to show signs of that player once again. So let's not write him off. Let's keep, behind our Kulusevski here. I think he deserves some more respect. And I think last time when I did one of these stat reviews, I think plenty pointed out in the comments that I should have showed him some more respect, and I'm trying to do that right here. Now let's take a look at Now let's finish off with one of our better performers from this season, Sonny. He's been very good at striker, and he's had to play different positions this season, which I think does skew his stats a little bit. He's also been battling an injury, and so he's been subbed off quite early as well, so that also sort of skews his stats a little bit, which means he's not going to be leading in as many categories as obviously a lot of us Sonny fans would like him to be, but I think give him more time, and once he's back to full fitness, we will start to get a bit more, of his sort of numbers in that sort of top 10 type of area. But I feel like despite not taking many shots, he's not registering nearly as many shots as Haaland or other sort of strikers or players around the Premier League. He's been actually more deadly, I think, with the chances that he has than the others. He's been able to get plenty of those shots on target despite not taking nearly as many as others do. And when you look at his actual goals scored, 6 minus his expected goals, which I think is around 3, he scored 3 more goals than the actual XG algorithm has him down for. And so Sonny this season has been very good at being able to take the chances for us, and you definitely need somebody in your side like that. After losing Harry Kane as well, we're going to need somebody to be that deadly finisher for us this season, and I think Sonny's going to be easily that guy. Now, I think Son does actually deserve to be in the conversation for one of the better finishers around the Premier League, especially now that actually Harry Kane has actually left this team. He's going to get more appreciation, I think, for that. Losing Harry Kane was massive because he was a ruthless goal scorer for us last season, scoring over 30 goals in a very defensive sort of negative, at least not low possession Tottenham type team, and we didn't create or really fasten that many chances, at least in sort of the latter end of the season, but Harry Kane was still able to take them for us and was able to be that ruthless goal scorer. I think Sonny is showing that he can be that for us this season. Keeping Sonny was absolutely vital because Kane was able to be that guy that we could rely upon to take whatever chance, sort of came his way if we weren't even creating that many, or if also we needed a goal in kind of desperate situations. He was that guy, and I think Sonny is reminding us that he has been that guy in the past for us, but is also being that guy now. Last season, he wasn't nearly at his best for a variety of different reasons, but he is showing that he can be deadly. He was deadly 2 seasons ago when he finished as the joint top scorer with Mo Salah, and he can be deadly again, I think, this season. And so let's see if he can be thrown into that conversation as one of the more deadly finishers around the Premier League now that sort of the cast or, sort of the shadow of Harry Kane is now gone. You look at sort of guys like Haaland, Alvarez, maybe guys like Ivan Toney, Ollie Watkins. I don't know. Name your striker. I think Sonny right now is showing to be far more clinical than they are, and is at least maybe around that conversation for, despite not being a true number 9 or maybe not seen always as a number 9, should definitely be thrown in sort of the general finishing type conversation. He is definitely in that conversation for the most clinical strikers in the Premier. Well, everybody, I'm going to leave it there when looking at sort of our players and how they stack up compared to other stars around the Premier League. A lot of good representation from our Spurs players, which really is a sign of how well we're playing, but also just sort of this more progressive, on the front foot type of style of play, which really gets the best out of our players and allows them to really register some pretty high numbers when it comes to some of these categories. Really always great to see some representation in the FBref sort of kind of department when you look at how they stack compared to other players in the Premier League. Let me know if there are any sort of stats, any sort of kind of comments that I might have made that really stuck out to you, anything that I might have missed or anything you might have disagreed with. Feel free to smash that like button for us on the way out, and we will be seeing ya. Come on, you Spurs. In the big Ange we trust. We never stop.